I want you to imagine a time when you were outside in the freezing cold for just way, way too long.
Oh, man. Yeah, like when you can't even bend your fingers.
Exactly. Think about your hands or maybe your toes. They get so incredibly cold that they cross over that invisible line from, actively hurting to just nothing.
Right. They just fall completely asleep.
Yeah. And then you finally get inside, you turn on the faucet, and you run those numb hands under hot water, and you feel absolutely nothing.
It's the weirdest sensation. It's like the water isn't even there.
You can literally watch the steam rising off your skin, but your brain is receiving zero information.
It's a very specific, almost unsettling kind of numbness, isn't it? You have this profound disconnect.
Yeah, totally.
Like, you logically know the water is hot because you can see it. I mean, you see the steam,
Yeah.
but your sensory feedback loop is just broken.
The communication line is down.
Exactly. The line between your physical environment and your internal awareness is completely offline.
And that exact feeling, that disturbing disconnect where reality is happening to you, but you just can't feel it, that's the perfect entry point for our deep dive today.
It really is.
We're unpacking a really profound philosophical text today by Lifeng, and it's titled Dead Parts Feel Nothing.
That's a striking title.
It is. And our mission today is to explore this fascinating parallel drawn in the work. The basic premise is that just as the physical body can suffer from this kind of profound numbness,
Or even full-blown necrosis.
right, where tissue actually dies and loses all feeling completely, well, our spiritual selves can also become entirely numb to the world around us.
And what immediately strikes me about this premise is how it forces us to confront this massive double standard we have.
What do you mean?
Well, think about how we view our own perception, our 5 physical senses, right? Sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch.
Okay, sure.
If I sit down with you right now and say, hey, my eyesight just isn't as sharp as yours, or my hearing is really degrading as I get older, you wouldn't argue with me.
No, of course not. Nobody gets deeply offended when they have to go to the optometrist.
Exactly. We readily and pretty humbly
Mhm.
accept that physical senses vary wildly from person to person,
Yeah.
and that they degrade.
Right, like nobody debates the need for prescription glasses, and the text really highlights this the moment you suggest to someone that their spiritual perception might not be 20/20.
Oh, people hate that.
They really do.
Yeah.
If you imply that their internal awareness differs from someone else's or that it might have, become dull over time, people get incredibly defensive.
Yeah, they usually just scoff at the idea and dismiss it entirely. We have so much ego tied up in our awareness.
But the text asks us to strip that ego away, because if we don't, we risk falling into that exact state of necrosis.
And that is exactly why you, listening to this right now, should care about this text.
Yeah, this isn't just about abstract mysticism or, debating high-level philosophy.
Not at all. It's about a highly practical question. Are you walking through your life fully awake and perceptive?
Or are you metaphorically sleepwalking? Are you carrying around dead parts that simply cannot sense the shifting realities right in front of your face?
To really grasp what spiritual numbness looks like, we have to start where the text starts, which is deeply understanding the biological reality of it.
Setting a baseline.
Right. We have to establish the baseline of what physical dullness actually means for a living organism.
Right.
Because a dull body part isn't just an inconvenience, it is a profound vulnerability.
The author gives us these incredibly visceral physical examples, and I want you to really try to conjure these sensations in your mind as we go through them.
Yeah, they're super relatable.
Think about a time your back was itching intensely. A light, gentle brush of a finger doesn't do anything, right?
No, not at all.
The nerve endings are demanding a vigorous, hard scratch just to register the relief.
Or consider a severe tension headache. A gentle pat on the head is completely useless.
Oh yeah, you need like a deep tissue massage for that to even register.
Exactly. The pain has raised the threshold for sensation so high.
And then the text pushes it to the extreme. We talked about hands numb from the cold, but then it brings up actual necrosis, like dead tissue.
Which is horrifying to think about.
It is. If you have a necrotic wound, you could take a needle and prick it directly, and there is zero sensation.
The tissue is physically attached to your body, but it is entirely deaf to the world.
We see this play out in varying degrees of severity, right? Paralysis or hemiplegia, where half the body entirely loses its sense of touch.
Or even a vegetative state, where the physical sensation of the entire organism is reduced to the absolute lowest possible baseline.
So the text uses these examples to establish a fundamental, undeniable rule of biology. The duller a part of your body is, the slower it reacts to external changes.
Right. And conversely, the more sensitive a part is, the faster it responds.
And that lag in reaction time is incredibly dangerous. I
Mhm.
mean, the physical body's entire job is to reflect changes in the material world.
It uses those five senses to gather data so you can survive.
Exactly. If you have a highly sensitive hand and you accidentally touch a hot stove, your nervous system fires instantly. You pull back in a fraction of a second and you save yourself from a third-degree burn.
But a numb hand doesn't get the message.
It just leaves the flesh on the stove.
Yeah, the dullness creates a lag in reaction time that results in severe, sometimes totally irreversible damage.
And this is the core pivot of the entire philosophy we're diving into. If physical necrosis means your hand burns on a stove because it can't feel the heat, what exactly does spiritual necrosis look like?
Well, the argument here is that just as the physical body reflects the material world, the spiritual body reflects changes in the non-material world.
Okay, wait, I need to pause and push back on this a little bit
Sir, go for it.
because I know exactly what some people are thinking right now. Spiritual perception and the non-material world, that can sound incredibly woo-woo.
It really can.
Are we suddenly talking about, like, seeing ghosts, reading auras, or having psychic powers? Because if that's the definition, you're going to lose a lot of rational people immediately.
That's a completely fair hesitation. When we hear non-material, we instantly think of the supernatural. But Su Feng is very careful to ground this concept in stark reality.
Okay, so what does it actually mean?
Spiritual perception, in this context, is not mysterious. It's not a parlor trick. It is intensely practical.
Right.
The non-material world simply refers to the unseen forces that shape our reality. Things like intentions, shifting societal moods, the trajectory of relationships.
Or like the hidden implications of a new rule at work.
Exactly. Think about the last time your company announced a minor restructuring.
Oh, that's a great example. Did you just brush it off because your paycheck hadn't changed yet?
Right. Or did you read the subtle cues, like the shift in the CEO's tone, or a sudden freeze on hiring, and quietly start updating your resume?
That is the perfect modern equivalent of the exact example used in the text. The author actually points to government policies to illustrate this.
Yes, the policy example is brilliant. People with a high degree of spiritual perception are hypersensitive to those subtle clues in society.
So when a new policy rolls out, they instantly read the non-material implications of that material change.
Right, they don't need the consequences to literally hit them in the face. They see the trajectory and they quickly adjust their thinking and adapt.
They see where the dominoes are going to fall before the first one even hits the ground.
Precisely. Now, contrast that with people who have low spiritual perception. The text argues that these individuals remain completely indifferent.
Even if you sit them down, point to the new policy, and explicitly explain how it's going to impact their industry, it just doesn't register.
The information is exactly like that hot water pouring over freezing hands. They logically hear the words, but they feel absolutely nothing.
Because they only react when the changes become a hard, inescapable reality. They wait until they are handed the pink slip to realize the company was in trouble.
They only wake up after the crisis has fully unfolded.
It's such a striking, frustrating image. They're literally waiting for the mountain to collapse on top of them before they acknowledge there was an earthquake.
Which naturally brings us to the most important question. If high spiritual perception allows you to navigate life so much more effectively,
If it lets you avoid crises and adapt to change before it destroys you.
right, why are some people so perceptive while others remain completely oblivious? What actually dictates this sensitivity?
The text traces this back to its absolute foundation. It states that the root of spiritual perception is simply spirituality.
But again, it defines spirituality in a very practical way. It's the ability to grasp things intuitively.
The author describes it as communicating heart to heart, mind to mind. And to really make this click, the text uses a fascinating analogy from the animal kingdom.
Oh, the horses and dogs comparison.
Yeah, it compares horses and dogs to pigs and cows.
Now, setting aside our modern domestic attachments for a moment, look at the historical relationship humans have had with these animals.
Okay.
We generally consider horses and dogs to be highly spiritual animals, meaning highly perceptive. Why? Because they intuitively sense human intentions.
Right. If you have a well-trained dog, you don't have to physically force it to understand what you want.
No, it just reads your body language, your energy, the subtle tone of your voice.
It reads the non-material cues and responds promptly. It understands the intention before the action even happens.
But then the text contrasts this with animals like pigs and cows. It argues that they lack this specific type of intuitive spirituality.
They don't naturally grasp those subtle human intentions.
Exactly. They don't react to heart communication. Instead, they only respond when they are physically acted upon, like being prodded or beaten with a whip.
They require a blunt, physical, material world force to actually change their behavior.
And it suddenly becomes so clear how this maps perfectly onto human behavior, doesn't it?
It really does. The perceptive dog reacts to the subtle clue. The less perceptive animal waits for the physical whip.
Humans operate on this exact same spectrum of sensitivity.
The perceptive employee reads the room and pivots. The spiritually necrotic employee waits for the corporate whip, the layoff, to force them to change course.
So why do so many of us fall onto the duller end of that spectrum?
Well, the author identifies a very specific root cause for this dullness. The primary reason for low spiritual perception is a scattered mind that completely lacks focus.
Think about a magnifying glass.
Okay, I love this analogy.
If you take a piece of paper outside on a sunny day and just lay it on the ground, the sun shines down, the energy is dispersed over a wide area, and the paper just gets a little warm.
Right, nothing happens.
But if you introduce a magnifying glass, you take all of that scattered, diffuse solar energy and you force it into a single intense point.
When you focus it like that, the paper ignites.
It's a brilliant physical representation of a psychological mechanism. Spiritual perception requires that same intense mental focus.
Which is so hard today. Think about how we live. Our human energy, our attention is naturally pulled in 1,000 different directions by the noise of the world.
Notifications, news cycles, petty arguments, endless doom scrolling.
Our attention is completely shattered. We are the opposite of the magnifying glass right now.
Exactly. And without the ability to focus our mental energy, it just dissipates. It scatters across 100 trivial things.
And as a result, our perception of what actually matters remains incredibly dull. We don't have enough concentrated energy to ignite our intuition.
We just get mildly warmed by the events around us, never actually seeing them clearly.
Okay, so if a scattered, unfocused mind is the root of this spiritual necrosis, how do we fix it? How do we become the magnifying glass?
Because the stakes are incredibly high here.
Yeah, is this high spiritual perception just a genetic lottery you're either born with or not, or is it something we can actively train?
The source is very encouraging on this point, actually. Spiritual perception absolutely can be cultivated. It is not a fixed trait.
Okay, that's a relief.
But the success of that cultivation comes down to one critical, non-negotiable factor: depth.
Cultivating that depth isn't about luck, though.
Yeah.
It reminds me of those old wildcatter oil companies, which is an analogy the text actually uses.
Oh, right. The drilling example.
Yeah. You can have an American oil company go into a specific region, set up all their million-dollar equipment, drill several wells, and find absolutely nothing but dirt.
They assume the land is barren, they pack up, and they leave.
But years later, a second oil company comes into the exact same patch of desert, sets up their rig, drills down, and strikes a massive reservoir of oil.
And the obvious question is, did the oil just magically appear for the second company?
Of course not. The resource was sitting there the entire time. The first company simply lacked a persistence to drill deep enough.
They hit a layer of hard rock and gave up. The second company went 1,000 feet deeper and found what was hidden.
The text pairs this with another great image, a diver searching for treasure on the ocean floor.
Whether or not that diver finds the treasure isn't about the ocean playing favorites.
No, it depends entirely on the depth of the dive. If you're only willing to snorkel around the surface, you're never going to see the shipwreck sitting at the bottom.
Translating this to human awareness, the author is stating that our ability to see the deeper essence of things, to perceive that non-material trajectory, to read the room, to sense where our lives are actually heading, it hinges entirely on the depth of our spiritual cultivation.
If you only skim the surface of life, constantly distracted by the shallowest, loudest things, your perception will remain shallow and dull.
So what does the actual process of drilling deep look like?
Right. The text says the method lies in refining the heart, and that when the heart is pure and transparent, spiritual perception becomes sharp.
Now, I have to admit, when I first read the phrase transparent heart, my mind immediately went to vulnerability.
Like wearing your heart on your sleeve or being totally emotionally open?
Exactly. But looking closer at the context, that's not quite what he means, is it?
No, it's not about emotional vulnerability in the way we usually use the term. In the context of his philosophy, a transparent heart is much closer to a perfectly clean window.
Oh, I like that.
Think of it as a state of absolute clarity. It's a heart that has actively scrubbed away the dirt, the noise, and the clutter.
It is no longer clouded by that scattered, unfocused energy we discussed with the magnifying glass.
So it's an internal decluttering.
Precisely. When your inner state is clear, when the glass is transparent, you aren't constantly distracted or misled by what the text calls the illusions of the world.
Like superficial material obsessions that grab our attention but lack any real, lasting substance.
Status, petty grievances, the endless pursuit of minor comforts. When you drop those, the light passes straight through you.
And the result of cleaning that window is profound.
Yeah.
The text argues that those who achieve this level of high spiritual perception rise entirely above worldly distractions.
They can cut through the noise of a chaotic situation, instantly seize on the critical points, and walk the best possible path in life.
Not because they are lucky, but because they aren't stumbling around in the dark anymore. They can actually see the terrain.
This leads the author to describe a very specific group of people who have mastered this level of deep cultivation. The text refers to them as great hermits.
Now, don't picture someone living in a cave with a long beard.
Right. In this context, these are simply individuals who possess extraordinarily high spiritual perception.
The author considers these rare individuals to be the absolute finest among humanity, precisely because they see reality so clearly.
I love how the text describes the experience of encountering one of these people. It's like being handed a flashlight in a dark forest.
Oh, that's such a good visual. Imagine you are lost in the pitch black, stumbling over tree roots, totally confused, panicking about which direction is north.
Meeting a person with this level of transparent, focused perception is like someone suddenly flipping on a high-powered beam.
It instantly dispels your confusion. Their clarity illuminates the obstacles, and suddenly you can see your own way forward.
It is a deeply hopeful image of what is possible when human perception is fully cultivated and utilized.
But, as with any profound philosophy, the text does not shy away from the darker side of the equation.
No, it doesn't. We've established what it looks like to cultivate depth, to clean the window, and find that light.
But the text also forces us to look at the ultimate fate of those who refuse to focus, those who refuse to drill deep, who stay scattered, and who allow themselves to remain spiritually necrotic.
Right, we have to look at the people whose hands are still completely numb to the hot water. What happens to them in the grand scheme of things when they never regain feeling?
The author synthesizes a truly tragic end state for those with completely dull spiritual perception. According to the source, these individuals eventually become entirely unresponsive to higher callings.
Now, it's important to note the text specifically references the calls of gods, Buddhas, and the greatest creator.
And just to be absolutely clear for you listening, whether you interpret those references literally as divine beings or metaphorically as the universe offering guidance, higher truths, or even just your own deepest intuition, the mechanism the author is describing is exactly the same.
Exactly. We are looking at this impartially as the philosophical endpoint of the author's argument. We aren't endorsing a specific religious view.
Right. The premise is simply that the non-material world is constantly offering guidance, a higher purpose, a better way to live.
But the text states that spiritually dull individuals dismiss all of these higher calls as pure nonsense.
Because they lack the sensitivity to perceive anything beyond what they can physically touch or buy, they continually deny the existence of anything greater.
They deny the subtle clues, they deny the trajectory of their own destructive choices, and ultimately they deny the greatest creator.
They are essentially trapped inside their own numbness. They've built a fortress out of their own lack of perception.
And the final poetic image the author leaves us with is genuinely haunting. It perfectly circles back to where we started this entire conversation with the freezing hands.
The text concludes by simply stating that necrotic tissue feels nothing. It doesn't matter how loud you shout at a dead nerve or how often you call out to it, it simply cannot respond.
And the final imagery is of these individuals standing out in the biting snow. They are shivering in the freezing cold, yet they remain entirely oblivious to their own condition.
They are literally freezing to death, but because the dead parts feel nothing, they don't even understand why they are shivering.
They lack the perception to even realize they are in mortal danger. They're waiting for the final crisis to destroy them simply because they couldn't read the signs that were right in front of them the entire time.
So here's a final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah, think about this.
We've talked about how spiritual perception requires deep drilling to find the oil. We've talked about how a lack of focus, a scattered mind endlessly distracted by the noise of modern life, can slowly deaden your awareness without you even realizing it, turning you into that numb limb standing out in the snow.
Right.
If Schweffing is right, and our internal sensitivity dictates how well we navigate the trajectory of our entire lives, what subtle clues or calls in your own life might you be ignoring right now simply because you haven't yet drilled deep enough to actually feel them?